a little bit about me. My name is Amy Polacko. I'm a freedom warrior. I help women take their power back after divorce or a toxic relationship. I'm a divorced single mom, so I help coach women to create an amazing next chapter, whatever that may be for them. And I also founded the empowerment group called Strong Savvy Women, which we launched at HAYVN, right? And we are going to continue to have some great events there, and hopefully a relaunch in the fall, Felicia, as everything gets back to normal and everybody's gathering at HAYVN now, which is awesome. But it's a free group for women, either single, divorced, or in transition, right? But, you don't have to be a member of Strong Savvy Women or in that situation to benefit from today's talk. This boundaries issue really is for everybody, you guys. Who's heard this saying, like, happy wife, happy life, right? How about a boundaried life is a happy life, right? Because these apply not just to personal relationships, but also professional ones as well. And if you feel like things are happening to you all the time, or you're stressed out with multiple demands, raise your hand. No, we can't see some of you. You can put it in the chat. You may need to tweak your boundaries. I love it when it's interactive, and I know we have an intimate group today. There are several people who are going to be watching this on recording who had work things come up. But, I'm going to ask you to really think about, is there a time where maybe you haven't had the best boundary in your life, and how you changed it up, or maybe something you'd like to change now? Definitely raise your hand if you want to share that story. But I'm going to share a little personal one with you. For me, and this kind of culminated over the last year. I love my church. I'm active in my church. I live in Ridgefield. But a lot of times when they ask me to do things, I felt this tremendous amount of guilt, you guys, saying no, right? Because if it's a cause you care about or community you care about, it's hard. But as a working single mom, and especially this past year, right, I didn't have as much time as maybe some members of the church who were retirees and home looking for something to do, and I felt guilty saying no all the time. But what I did was I had an honest conversation with my rector, who's a woman, and I said, with a family herself, and I said, I love our church, but here's my situation. I can't really take on something else right now and be in charge of this or in charge of that, blah, blah, blah. And she said, no problem. I get it. You have a place here. Thanks for, telling me. And recently she reached out to me to represent our church in Hartford, Connecticut for a statewide conference for Episcopal churches. And she said to me, all right, this is for you. It's not much of a time commitment. We think you'll be great representing church. And I said, oh, great, perfect. And so that's an example of, I was kind of scared to come forward and kind of say, I can't do this. And she made it workable for me, and we're both happy. Does that make sense, you guys? Anybody have a situation right now, or maybe one in the past you want to share where maybe you didn't have the best boundaries? Or I can tell you're thinking, Felicia. All right, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. So, okay, I'm going to keep going here, and if you want to share anything, definitely let me know. Okay, so where do we learn about boundaries, you guys? It's in our childhood, right? It's from social situations. A lot of times it's trial and error. It's not something we learn about in school, right? A lot of times people will bemoan the fact that we don't learn about financial things, like how to balance a checkbook or create a budget in school. We don't really learn about boundaries either, right? So sometimes people actually reach adulthood before they establish good boundaries in their lives. And I love this story that Oprah Winfrey shares, where she admits that she was a people pleaser. And she talks about this story a lot and didn't really establish stricter boundaries until she had, quote unquote, made it. And in a story she tells often, she says that, she started to, set these boundaries and say no with Stevie Wonder of all people. So he called her and was like, we know you love the children. I have this charity. Will you donate to this charity to help the children? And she said no. And she's like, of course I love the children, but I have my own charities that I want to support with children. I just said no. And she said in her head, she had built this up like he was never going to talk to her again. He was never going to write a song for her again. He was never going to do all this. And he was just like, okay. And that was it. They hung up. Everything was fine. And she kind of like took her power back in a way. And I thought that was a really good example, because oftentimes it's scary to establish a boundary, right? But the thing is, when you have that minute of courage, you have a lifetime of happiness. Often people will think, oh, how can I set boundaries and still be a good person, right? And the two are not mutually exclusive. Does anyone think Oprah is a bitch? Probably not, right? She does a lot. She said no to one little thing, and that kind of shows that she's strategic about where she donates her money, right? She also joked that people used to literally show up at her doorstep and ask her for money, and she gave it because she was like, they know I have it. You know what I mean? So I really like to think of this visual of, a lot of us have fences in our yards, right? So we keeps our pets in, can keep our kids in, give us a sense of security. And I want you to imagine putting up an invisible boundary around your personal life, your emotional life, and also your workspace. Okay. So before we get to some tips I'm going to share with you today, I want to give you a quiz to see if you have weak boundaries. So I want you to just keep track for yourself. You don't have to share your score here, but I want you to kind of tally whether you say yes, like true or false to these statements I'm going to read to you. Okay, here we go. You are afraid to say no to people because you don't want to hurt their feelings. You consistently give more than you get in relationships. You feel guilty about doing things for yourself and think you should be worrying about other people. You don't speak up when you feel like you're not treated well. You do what others want, even if it goes against your beliefs or values. You feel overscheduled, but can't figure out how to say no to commitments. You're tired for no apparent reason. You overshare personal information with people you just met. You fall in love easily and quickly. You get over involved in other people's problems. You're always the one in your friend group who is roped into organizing or helping. You often feel like people take advantage of you or manipulate you to get what they want. You have more work assigned to you than others at work because your boss knows you'll say yes. And lastly, coworkers load off their work on you. Well, we know that doesn't happen at HAYVN, right, Felicia? But other places maybe. HAYVN's this wonderful utopia. I love working there. Okay. So how did you guys do? I see, feel free to share in the chat if you want to share anything. So, right? It really kind of makes you think. And, if you said yes to 5 or more of those, you probably need to take a look at your boundaries and do some, soul searching. And that's what this is all about. Let's talk about why you need healthy boundaries, you guys. Good boundaries are a sign of emotional health, self-respect, right? And strength. This year, probably more than ever, has challenged our boundaries more than ever before. And especially for moms who have been working at home. I know I read several stories, and I think one in the New York Times where they said that, if a husband and wife were working at home, the husband usually got the private office and the mom was out in the kitchen working. Yes, I see a lot of nodding, while all the other chaos is going on, right? So I don't know, maybe a healthy boundary in that case would be the mom locks herself in a closet somewhere in the bathroom. I don't know. But you know, so that's an example. And, when you take care of yourself, and a lot of us who've juggled work and kids, especially during this extremely challenging year, when you take care of yourself, it's better on not just you, but your kids, your family, your relationships, and your work colleagues, right? So the thing is, though, having boundaries that are too strong isn't so good either. If you have too rigid boundaries, you might keep others at a distance, right? You might seem detached, even with in intimate relationships. You could have few close friendships or relationships and avoid those type of relationships. So I like to think of it like the Goldilocks principle. A person with healthy boundaries establishes the behavior you will accept from other people and what behavior people can expect from you, right? So if you have healthy boundaries, you might have lines that won't be crossed. You share personal information appropriately, not too much, not too little. You understand your personal needs and wants and know how to communicate them. You're confident in your own opinions. And, perhaps most importantly, you're okay with saying no to others and accept when others tell you no as well. So one thing I want to touch on, guys, is, one of the things I do is help women who may have been in a toxic relationship, or, marriage, obviously. And by this, I mean, it could be with a narcissist or a sociopath or other people with personality disorders. And these predator types actually prey on people with weak boundaries, right? They gaslight. And that's a whole nother HAYVN halftime, right? Where they, kind of challenge reality and are tell lie upon lie upon lie. They push their own agendas and make you feel guilty for having your own needs. So, they manipulate you in a way where you kind of allow one hole in the dike, if you can picture that, and then another, and then pretty soon it's like Swiss cheese, and you're like, what happened, right? And it's something that happens gradually. You don't realize it. It can happen to very smart people who are empathetic and good people. If they have weak boundaries, doesn't mean you're a bad person or not a strong person. And often you don't realize it's happening. I just want to share really quickly this chart that I love. And this is more obviously for intimate relationships, but it's worth touching on, signs of a healthy relationship. There's, respect, honesty, all of these things. Unhealthy, disrespectful, there's a lot of lying going on. There's control. You're pressured into activities you don't want to be part of, right? And someone's controlling your time, and that's where you're not upholding your boundaries, right? And again, a lot of times people don't realize it's happening until it's kind of too late. In an abusive relationship, the person's controlling, isolating a partner from other people, denying things. That's the gaslighting and all of those things. So, one of the best firewalls from preventing a relationship from morphing from healthy rather to unhealthy to abusive is to, establish strong boundaries from the start, right? So the reality is that many of us have a mix of boundaries depending on the situation. You might have strict boundaries at work and more loose ones at home with family and friends. The key is to find the right mix to make yourself happy, right? So how do you do this? Here are my tips for you. Enjoy some time alone and reflect on your own values. What's important to you? What has made you feel like you've been taken advantage of? Write it down. I'm sure others who have great boundaries in your life, right? Like maybe there's a friend who you say, hey, do you want to grab brunch on Sunday? And they say, you know what? I reserve Sunday. That's my only downtime. That's my family day. Or, that's the day I read the Sunday Times and I don't go anywhere. People who have boundaries, right? Could be you, could be someone else. Because I remember when I've encountered that, I've been like, wow, that's good for them, right? So are you mad at them when they say no to brunch? No, of course not, right? You're like, all right, let's do another day, right? So that's that. Two, don't feel guilty about blocking time off in your calendar for you. It's really easy when you have multiple demands on you, especially kids and partners and jobs and networking and friends, right? To not, that adage, pay yourself first when it comes to your paycheck, goes for your energy as well, right? And your time. 3, start small and set boundaries where you haven't before. And of course, Oprah joked she didn't exactly start small with Stevie Wonder, but this is probably the hardest part, because if it's an existing relationship where you've let things slide, it's kind of harder to set the boundary, right? But having an honest conversation is a great way to do it. 4, in new relationships, like we said, set the boundaries early and make it clear. 5, at work, and it could be your workspace, shutting your door. HAYVN is great. I love HAYVN, but I can imagine where, like, when I've worked there, it's so tempting to like visit all day, right? Because it's so fun. Right? And there are probably times where you have to say, all right, I'm going to close my door, do some work, then I'm going to reward myself with going out into the beautiful kitchen, getting coffee or whatever. Right. So, lunch breaks maybe, or having a walk by yourself to kind of regroup is important. 6, tell someone nicely if they overstep your boundaries and communicate about it rather than stewing over it, which is not going to make you happy or them either. And just remember, number 7, not having boundaries is not good for mental health, right? So I want to pause there before I wrap up and see, what do you guys think of this? Anyone have any thoughts, or has it brought anything to light that you've thought of in your own life, or do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, no, I worked with a coach, and one of the things that she did, the first thing, she's like, well, what's your, time that you're most productive? And I was like, well, I really, or what, kind of describe your perfect day. And I said, my perfect day would be if I just had like a couple hours to myself before the day started. So she just said, block your calendar every day. She said, first try it for a week. And then she said, just do it for forever, and have like 2 hours in the morning that is your time. And that really made a difference.
That's great. So you've just continued doing it. How does it make you feel, Felicia? Do you feel more in control of your day?
I do. Yeah. And I actually, when I don't have that time, it's a different, it's more difficult for the day.
Right. Like the day probably runs you instead of you running the day. I know when I see how many emails you are copied on, I'm like, oh my gosh, how does Felicia keep up with all these? So that's good to know. Anybody else have any thoughts? I mean, Claire, you're a college student, and I think it's great to think and learn about these things now, right? Because I don't remember ever thinking about it at all.
Yeah, for sure. And especially like this last year, everything being over Zoom, I feel like we got more work, and then also had more events that people wanted us to attend, which I don't know, it was definitely hard to manage this whole year. But like I definitely did create and set some new boundaries this year for the school year, and it helped me a lot. I didn't get totally swamped by Zoom.
Good. Absolutely. Anybody else?
I was interested to hear you say about the different styles, if you want to call it that way. You can have very definitive boundaries at work, but in your home or your personal life be a totally different person. And I found that that's how I operated. At work, I had very specific boundaries and was very successful. And at home, not so much. So I think that's important for people to note. And it's also important to think that it's never too late to set boundaries. Even in my age, closely approaching advanced age, let's put it that way, I still set boundaries with people as I meet them. As I meet new people, I set boundaries with them. So it's never too late to start doing that.
That's great. We were chatting with Kathy before we recorded. She is retired in South Carolina now, but she used to run an entire like federal courthouse in Albany, New York. So yes, you had to have boundaries there to keep everybody in line in your former career. So that's great. That's good to know. and, you know, obviously it may not be this crowd here, but some of our strong, savvy women are on here, and I know some are listening to the recording. And dating, right? It's, you know, when you meet someone, I mean, you need to know when you go out in the dating world, like, what are your boundaries, and, you know, for various things. So that's a whole nother animal. Anybody else want to share? Did the quiz surprise you at all? Was anybody surprised by anything?
I think it was interesting because I was thinking about like me now versus me, you know, when I first got out of college, or, you know, I was thinking about Claire, like, you know, what you're encountering, or my kids. I'm like, you know, you really do need to set those boundaries, and there's a fear factor when you're first starting out that you wanted to say yes to everything, which you kind of have to do that too a little bit. So but I don't know, maybe that's something that for Amy to describe, but
Yes.
but you know, you over time, like when you kind of start scratching your head and saying, well, why did I, you know, like I shouldn't have let myself do it. It's a learning process.
Absolutely. Like I said, trial and error. I think you start to discern over time, right? Like, I used to go to so many networking things. I mean, I love networking, so I'd go, but then I realized I wasn't getting anything accomplished. I was just like, at networking things, like, you have to kind of say, like, okay, HAYVN is where I love this. I don't want to miss. Like, maybe I can't make it to every meeting of this group, but every other month or whatever it is. So you know, time is our most precious commodity, right? So that's really important. So I hope, you guys, that you will go out there this week and take a small step in setting a boundary that is a big deal for you. And I think the most important thing to remember is you have your own back, right? You will feel more at peace, and little by little, you will become a boundaries badass. If you want to find out more about me and what I do, my website is freedomwarrior.info. And I, you know, love coaching women. You can sign up for a free 30-minute consultation. Or if there's someone you know who is in, you know, a situation going through a transition, divorce, you know, encourage them to join Strong Savvy Women. It's free. We have a Facebook page. We'll be doing some in-person events coming up, and some get-togethers this summer. And you know, community is a really important thing. I know that's what HAYVN is founded on, and that's why it's so great that we are kind of under the HAYVN umbrella. So I encourage you to check that out, even if it's not for you. Please spread the word. So with that, I hope I have made you guys more of a badass today. Does anybody have any final questions or thoughts?